All right. So, 1, 2, 3. All
Ooh,
right.
that's a good crisp line on mine.
Yeah, mine's pretty impressive, if I do say so. And I'm going to, however, put your audio down a little bit.
Oh, am I just so loud?
Well, I've started to hear your voice on my audio track just very
Oh,
slightly, so I'm going to put the audio down just a little bit. Can you speak again?
yes, of course.
Okay, just making sure I can actually still hear you. Okay, I'm going to give my, if we could have a silent count, I'm going to count to 5 in my head, and then I'll do the spiel and see if I get through
Man, I just want to tell you right before you get started, when you were like, okay, good, I've got you off of there, I was so tempted to make just like a really loud noise to put it back on there.
it. Nice.
All right, you may count.
Okay. Howdy, and welcome to Modern Metamorphoses, the podcast that takes a look at comics, prose, movies, TV shows, and other media involving the physical or mental alteration of its characters or metahuman themes. We strive to be insightful, respectful, and inclusive in this series, and although we do at times discuss adult material, this podcast itself is meant to be all access. Join us now as we look at how metamorphoses in media have evolved into the modern era. I am your comics and stories creator, Dan Standing.
And I'm Alex Fort, fantasy fetish researcher and scholar.
And today, we're going to self-congratulate ourselves for getting through all of that in one go without much stumbling over my own tongue.
It's a bit of a tongue twister, in a way. I've been looking at the words you've been saying, and yeah, they have the capacity that, like, in the cadence they are given, you can trip up.
I think more so it's just I forget how to introduce myself every single time. Like, what do I do? Oh, yeah.
I love the
That's
fact
right.
that we refuse to, like, pre-record it and then just, like, put that soundbite at the very beginning of every podcast, and we insist on doing it live every time.
I go back and forth on that because there's the part of me who just enjoys the more, like Bob Ross style, I'm just going to do my introduction myself every single time. I'm not really trying to elevate this or me to a level of Bob Ross, like, professionalism, but, like, there's the part of me that just enjoys that sort of, like, cadence and vibe.
I think you just like the praise you get when you nail it.
That's true. I'm not above, accepting that. Anyway, this is not a compliment Dan Standing podcast. This is actually... What's that?
It's not?
No, as much as I try to make it that, that's my real reason for having, wanted to do this.
It's for your ego. I knew it.
Don't psychoanalyze me. Anyway, we here at Modern Metamorphoses, each episode pick an item of pop culture that involves transformation themes and take a look at it and see if we recommend it to you, our dear listeners. And normally, we have done films in prior episodes, not just because there are a lot of films with transformation themes in it, but also because in this COVID era, it isn't so easy for Mr. Fort and I to necessarily share back and forth anything that's not digitally available.
Yeah, it's a bit rough.
However, because we are both massive nerds, every once in a while, I don't mean to speak for you. I accept.
No, I'm a dangerous nerd.
We certainly do have other areas that overlap, and one of the things that our interests overlap in is a certain podcast turned comic book adaptation.
Yes, The Adventure Zone.
For those of you who are unfamiliar, The Adventure Zone is a podcast that is started by the McElroy brothers and their father, the McElroy brothers have done a lot of stuff, both on Polygon and YouTube, but also their own other advice humor podcast called My Brother and Me. And the Adventure Zone, which they do with their father, is sort of a spin-off of that. And the first arc of their podcast was a Dungeons and Dragons story that they did.
Mm-hmm. Like textbook, if they actually could read the book. Dungeons and Dragons, like first level campaign.
Mm-hmm.
It's very cute. I know it's like one of the rougher seasons to get through, but I find it adorable.
I honestly, I'm going to be up front here. As I was talking with Mr. Fort before we started recording, I am a huge McElroy fanboy, although Amber needed to drag me kicking and screaming into it. I will say up front here that I was not a discoverer of the McElroys or their material. I was brought into it by others whom I'm thankful to, but have certainly become a fanboy, and I'm going to do my best to be objective about the story that we're going to do. The story that we're looking at today is the third chapter of the we live over there?
Yeah, no, I didn't realize that my cord was so short, so I went to adjust my mic closer to my face, and it just dragged the phantom power supply off the table, but it landed on my leg, so we're good.
Okay. I'm glad to hear that.
It just sounds really technical. It just, a box almost fell off the table.
So as fate itself tries to remind me to move it along here, this is the third chapter of their balance arc when they began their podcast. It is called Pedals to the Metal, and it is their podcast is so popular that they had begun adapting it into graphic novel format. And so we have at hand here the Adventure Zone Pedals to the Metal trade paperback, which is written by the brothers and illustrated.
It's good. We're good.
and illustrated by, and I am going to apologize, I know how to pronounce Carrie's last name. I think it's Piech? Carrie Piech?
That sounds about right.
Which is a lovely. Carrie's work is lovely and adorable, and I really like it.
Oh yeah.
But I'm a huge McElroy fanboy. I've been lucky enough to meet all of them multiple times, including Clint, their father. And I just want to kind of ramble and get all that out now because I want it out of the way so we can get to talking about the story.
You met them on a boat, right?
I did meet them on a boat, yes. Amber and I have been fortunate enough to have gone on 2 cruises for Joko Cruise. Both cruises with the entire McElroy family, brothers, spouses, parents, children. We're all on there. I've had the pleasure of multiple times encountering Griffin McElroy in a hallway, looking very terrified about not knowing where his room was. And I don't want to get into a Joko Cruise fan club podcast episode here, but I cannot wait for cruises to be back so that I can go on it again. I highly recommend Joko Cruise. It's a very welcoming and friendly and inclusive event. I got to wear a dress for the first time at one of the parties. It's a really cool thing. So focusing.
I'm going to be honest, there's a small part of me that's like, is there another question I can ask that's going to make him talk more about how much he loves them boys?
I'm so trying hard, focused, purpose.
I know. I'm feeling a little sassy. We can get right into the nitty gritty of some written word.
So I think the thing to mention to our readers here is this is chapter 3 of, I don't remember how many chapters of
6.
The podcast. Was it 6? It's 100 episodes of the podcast, I think.
Oh, at least.
Yeah. And my first thing that I'm going to say is, if you haven't listened to The Adventure Zone or you haven't read the trade, stop listening and go listen to that or read it up until this point.
I recommend both if you can afford it. I will always say that the Adventure Zone first series is very much like Star Trek: The Next Generation. Ignore the first season, pick it up from after that, because everyone gets much better, gets a better grip on what they're aiming for and what they're doing. For the written text, start from the beginning, because they iron out all the things, because they did it after the fact. They didn't just like do season 1 and then write the graphic novel. Like graphic novels came years, and they collaborated to make it a very good, cohesive text and visual representation. And listen and then read or alongside, because there are notable differences between the two that have more of an impact when you know the origin of the written.
I agree. And I'd actually go so far as to still say, listen to the first few episodes, if only because that's where a lot of the things that they will reference later are started, and you'll feel a little out of it for not listening to the first one if you've got the time to spare to do it.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like half of that episode, at least the first episode, is just them trying to figure out what a character can do.
Yeah, and for me, though, as somebody who particularly at that time had never played Dungeons & Dragons, I have since then played it, but for someone who never played Dungeons & Dragons, that was also, for me, something of a, like, kind of learning with them thing. I imagine for anybody who started listening to that and knew Dungeons & Dragons fairly well, that must have been extraordinarily frustrating in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say that, yes, if you listened to this and heard Dungeons & Dragons podcast and thought to yourself, I don't know how to play Dungeons & Dragons, why would I listen to somebody else do it? Trust me, it's part of the entertainment. Yeah. If you preferably don't know how to play Dungeons & Dragons at the beginning. It's as you said. They
don't either.
Yeah. It is, as you said, kind of like Star Trek: The Next Generation's first season, or the example that I go to, the first half of the Beast Wars computer-generated animated series, where it's rough to get through it, but I do feel worth having that knowledge and experience for when references to those episodes come later. But this
what a
chapter,
Beast Wars.
What's that?
I said, what a poll. Like, I haven't really thought about Beast Wars in decades.
You're going to make me feel old again, aren't you, when I say that it was one of my favorite cartoon shows to watch when it aired originally on Saturday mornings.
I was there. I was old enough to watch it when it came out. I had a few Beast Wars toys.
Oh, phew, good.
Yeah, don't worry.
No, I am actually not old enough to have really gotten into the original Transformers animated series. It wasn't until Beast Wars that I actually became a Transformers fan. So,
same.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, also go watch Beast Wars, because I don't know if I can really make an excuse for Transformers as a reason to do Beast Wars on the future episode.
Dan, I'm gonna just chime in and say, if I watch Beast Wars and I'm like I feel like my eyes are thrown against like a piece of pavement just by how chunky it is, I don't know if the nostalgia is gonna save it.
As somebody who has sat down and rewatched also Reboot's early seasons,
also a Canadian CGI show
by the same company, actually.
Oh, well, that explains a lot.
The same studio did both, and it's one of those things where you just got to accept the style as the pushing as much as they could the limitations of the times. But
yes,
Adventure Zone, as somebody who, when listening to the final episode of the Adventure Zone, was sitting in their car in the Cleveland Hopkins International Airport parking garage waiting for Amber's flight to get in, and was crying their eyes out as the last episode of this arc wrapped up. I cannot recommend it enough, and if you are even curious about reading or listening to the podcast based on our ramblings here, I would absolutely recommend, again, just stop listening, go enjoy some fantastic multimedia, and then come back to us, I don't know, next year when you finish listening to the podcast all the way through.
Yeah, I'll admit that it hit me really, really hard. And I showed it to my partner, who then didn't stop crying for 3 days after the finale. Like
Mm-hmm.
I it almost was like a breakup, or something that was like a light association to what anything that happened. Like you could say like one word in a certain way, and they'd be like, "Oh my god, do you remember?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I do.
Mm-hmm.
I was there, and then I did it before, but luckily it takes the edge off the second time you do it."
Yeah, because then I had to re-listen to it with Amber myself. It was like, she's like, gets off the plane. She's like, "Why are your eyes so red?" And I'm like, "We're gonna have to listen on the way home."
I can't drive while I'm crying.
Yeah, you're gonna have to take the wheel. So anyway, everyone's
Yes.
had enough spoiler warnings. So the Adventure Zone, we've got three primary characters that the two of the brothers and their father played, and that is Merle, the crap,
Cleric.
he's a cleric. Thank you. I was gonna say paladin. I'm like, I know
Yeah,
that's
no,
wrong.
he's a nature cleric.
Mm-hmm. And then we have Magnus, who is the fighter, and Merle's a dwarf.
Yeah.
Merle's a human fighter, and then Taco is a elf wizard.
Yes.
Yes. And to make a very long story short, those three work for an organization that is trying to collect these random items of power,
Yes.
and each chapter is basically almost every chapter is focused around their attempts to retrieve one of these items.
Yeah, I like the structure of it because it is very like episodic in the sense of like, now this arc is going to talk about this one relic, and then the next arc is about another relic, and so they go through it, and it's very focused, and like gives a lot of room to develop a lot of things. When I feel like a lot of like other RPGs are very open. And so it's like, well, where do you guys want to go next? And it's like, well, we're going to go over to this town. And the GM's like, okay, 1 second. Let me get my notes out. It's like, nope, this is all very much plays out like a Saturday morning cartoon of like, these are the people you will meet. These are the people you will know. This is the places you will go. And you can't deviate because this is where you need to be to get this relic.
Yeah, and I will say, Griffin, who is the dungeon master for the game that they're playing, certainly does at times let them go a little out of bounds. I know that that Griffin's talked about in some storylines where like he's had entire events and scenes planned, and they have done something totally unexpected that has totally derailed his intentions, but he always tries to let them sort of explore and wander about in the world he's created. So
Yep.
it's
Even when they're on a railroad, he's not railroading them.
true. So Pedals to the Metal, Chapter 3, is the first one where I feel like everything kind of comes together and everybody understands their characters the best. And the trio are assigned the job of retrieving what is called the Gaia Sash. And it is, I believe, described as just a piece of fabric that allows one mastery over nature.
Pretty much, yeah. It's a belt.
Oh, yeah, it is a belt, isn't it?
Yep. It's a big old wavy belt.
And from here, they begin their adventure in this town.
The city of Goldcliff.
The city of Goldcliff, thank you. I'm definitely being showed up on my like supposed fanboyness here. I'm going to put the book down because I keep wanting to check it too.
I have like the very specific knowledge for things that don't matter. And so it's just kind of like, oh yes, you're talking about Merle High Church and Magnus Burnsides and Taco from TV.
Yes, the TV chef in the Dungeons and Dragons world, which I love that they just make it work.
Well, that's like
And-
always what he's referred to himself as. So that, like in the book, like in one of his legal paperwork, like his name is literally Taco parenthetical from TV.
One of the wonderful little details that they
yeah.
worked into the graphic novels.
Mm-hmm.
But so before we get again, both of us being rabid fans of this, and I don't know if we've really done something before where we are both equally rabidly fanboyish of the topic at hand. So
Let's see here. I'm thinking, what all have we done?
Mm-hmm.
No, no, I don't think there's been anything where we're both like, hell yeah, I'm all about that.
Yeah.
Is usually we
Um,
pick either garbage or things we didn't expect to be garbage or things that are older and we thought were really, really on point, and then also just like there's occasionally some good things.
yeah. I gotta say, I was much harder on Fern Gully than I thought I was going to be. But,
It's because he's grown ups now.
yeah.
Trix is no longer fruit shaped because we're grown ups.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that transformation was, no. Anyway. So, in order to keep us a little bit focused and on task,
Yes.
I'm going to make sure that we are trying to concentrate on the cause process impact of the transformation and mental change aspects of the story, because I know, and we really should have actually embraced this a little more before recording, but I was eager to get us started. We could just sit here and go through this thing page by page and be like, oh yeah, there was this moment, and oh yeah, there was this moment.
Yeah, we can give a quick summary, like back of the book summary. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You want me to give it a shot?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So the the three boys, show up at Gold Cliff in order to collect the Gaia Sash. They meet up with the sergeant, or the Captain Bane. That's his name. And they're like, "Hey, you told us that there's a relic here. Where is it?" And he's like, somebody named the Raven has it. They're inside this bank, but the bank's covered in all these vines." And so they go get in, and they meet the Raven, and are deftly defeated because she has the powers of nature, and can command them almost like Poseidon style. They meet up with the halfling monk, Hurley, who is like a officer, like she's on the police force, and she's been trying to catch the Raven, and so they're like, well, how will we get her? It's like, well, obviously she's going to overpower you, so what we need to do is appeal to her competitive sense. There is a what are the cars called? Do you remember what they're called?
The battle wagons?
Battle wagon race that goes around. It's mildly illegal. It's fine, but she's gonna be in that race, and if we can beat her in the race, that may show that like the power of the sash is fallible, and she'll give up her, parading around as a god. So they go around. They steal an arcane core from this local gang that's also in the race. That's a whole to-do. It's wonderful and funny. They get the core, they get in the race. It's like really intense. And they end up through lots of magic hijinks winning. But unfortunately, the thrall of these objects doesn't make it so easy to abandon them and whoever they've claimed to be their host. And so there's a very big epic climax with the forces of nature, and eventually Hurley appeals to the Raven, and it gets her to give up the sash only through like some massive sacrifice, and they get their relic and they go home.
That is a adept summary without going into too many details, and we'll get into the nitty-gritty of some things, but that's an excellent summarization of the events that occur.
In case you haven't read, seriously, if you haven't heard or read it, stop. Now's the time. Stop. I've given you a second chance. Go.
Yeah, we left out the good bits. Go.
Yeah, I gave you a summary like you'd find on like Cliff Notes. Next, we're gonna talk about the thematics of what to do. Whatever. Get out of here. Go.
Yeah, go. Because
and then come back.
Come back, because unfortunately, in order to completely address all of the transformation aspects in here, we will have to do spoilers. So, to get to that, do you want to do the mind control aspects of the story first, and then get into the transformative ones, since that, I think, is the broader subject matter?
Yeah, let's see. Yeah, let's explore that space.
Okay. So, first, I think the simplest one is that there is a Bugbear character who's got two different names depending upon podcast or book, but a Bugbear regardless in both. And because of a long explanation, he has a fascination. No, what is the actual spell? It's
it's that friendship spell.
Yeah.
Or,
Taco is...
It's not command. What is it?
No.
But basically, yeah, he casts a spell and makes the bugbear think he's his friend
Yes.
and will do anything for him.
Yes. And that influence, though, kind of comes and goes throughout the issue. So there are times when the bugbear is completely violent and trying to kill them, and then there are times where he comes under the thrall of the glitched spell. It's probably not a spell. Is it a cantrip? I don't know.
It's absolutely a spell. I think
it is a spell. Okay.
Yeah, first level, I think.
The spell, he falls under the enthrall of the spell and becomes their friend again. And I think it's, well shown his two different sides, the natural one that wants to kill everybody, and then the enthralled version of him who just wants to help no matter what, even if it means getting struck by electrical booby traps.
Yeah. I'm trying. I was trying to look up the spell, and I'm trying to remember what it is. It's like charming. He charmed him.
Oh yes, that what? Of course it was a charm, and we couldn't guess it. Yeah, he charmed him, and because of other things that aren't revealed until in later chapters, the charm spell persists longer than it should in weird ways, and Bugbear in this chapter portrays that pretty well.
Yeah.
Aside from that, there is the thrall, as you mentioned, the thrall of the mythical item.
Yeah. The relics. Each of them has like their own distinct, like, I want to say personality, but they're almost intelligent items. For everyone who's touched a tabletop RPG, like if you don't meet like the difficulty, like will save, they can basically override you and pilot you and use you as opposed to you commanding them.
And our three protagonists, for mysterious reasons, mostly because in general it's presumed they're too dumb to be enthralled.
They always play it like they're a little too oblivious to like really understand what it's offering, and so they're just like, no, why would I want that? It's like, come on, you could like throw lightning at people, and it's like, I'm a wizard, I can already do that.
Into the bag with you. And so yeah, but we do see, so as you mentioned earlier, a little bit, that the Raven also has a name of Sloane.
Yes.
And that's her real name.
Yeah.
And under the sash, she has taken on much more literally the persona of the Raven, who she races as in Battle Wagons.
Yeah, she also does that when she does crime. Like, she doesn't, like, it's really, like, listed that she steals or breaks into places just for the sake of being able to do it. It's more of like, why climb a mountain? Because it's there. It's like, why break into a building? Because I can. Like, I don't take anything of any real value. I gotta see if I get in there. Now, why race? It's dangerous. Well, just so I can win.
Just to prove oneself.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so there's that aspect of the thrall of the Gaia Sash that takes over Sloane.
Yeah,
and
it presents itself a few times, like, where she like seems to come to her senses, and she's like, "You gotta get out of here," and then they're like, "But we need the sash," and then like it like takes back over, and it's like, "You're not taking this," and like concussive force or wind or more plants or whatever push them away. There's always like these small little moments where like Sloane comes out and then is just immediately taken back over.
It is as if when she's pushed beyond a moral boundary by the sash, that she's able to like assert herself to pull back from that, because there's certainly instances where she could have easily killed characters and kind of reserves her attack in that regard.
Yeah.
But then, the sash, not wanting to lose control of that, reasserts itself and escapes via means that wouldn't allow Sloane's will to push up again.
Exactly. Yeah.
And her expression, I mean, she's wearing a mask through much of this, but you get a lot of expression both through the eyes underneath it, and of course the ability, the art styling of being able to make the mask show, you know, emotions and things. And you know, she's a very expressive character. You can really get the idea of her struggling at times between her personality and the sash.
It's something that's very difficult to show in still images, because like in film, it's very easy to show hesitation, but like when everything's already still frame, showing like consternation and like it's like I want to, but I don't want to. Having that kind of like dissonance expressed on a face in a way that people understand that this is dissonance and not like constipation is very difficult.
There's a lot of like half-closed eyes looking down off the bottom of the panel sort of moments to help indicate that.
Like the smiles almost seem like the artist completely understands how to like make like a neutral face different from like a very slight frown that's decipherable between the two.
Mm-hmm.
Like I gotta give compliments. Like I love the use of color and I love the faces. They're all like you could take a snapshot of each of those faces and make a mood board.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, Carrie Piesch is a fantastic artist. Like every expression and thought and reaction that these characters have on page is the exact look and expression and reaction that I feel like they should have. Like there's never a moment where I'm looking at this and feeling like the core of the characters aren't being completely captured in every single panel.
Exactly. I love the fact that like we got so much, right? Because before it's Griffin McElroy trying to play another character, arguing with another character that he's playing, and then you got the other people watching, or rather spectating orally, and then you get the written version. And I think that like they both have their own impacts in different ways.
Agreed. And I think that covers that. In regards to physical transformations, there's really only two instances that I've found. There's the kind of half off panel moment where Sloane transforms herself into an actual raven and flies away. And it's a good it's a good illustration. It captures the process and looks good. They got some nice feathers and everything going.
I appreciate it because it is very, very, like, it's very, like, it's noticeable but sudden.
Yeah.
The ability to portray time in something that is based entirely off of your ability to look at each panel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's hard to describe with words, even though that was what originally happened.
I would say that part of the reason it works is that there is a sequence of it. There's you see that her hand starts to change, and then the feathers kind of spread up her arm in another panel, and then in the subsequent page, there is a large bird flying off. So you can connect the dots as this alteration of her form kind of moves through the panels into the next page. It's nicely done and well conceived, I would say.
Absolutely. I have sent you on the Discord the link to Carrie's Instagram.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, we should include that.
I will make sure that I make that a note in my file here.
Yep, because the best way to pay someone an exposure is to pay them with money and then give them exposure.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so the Raven transformation is I would say certainly the less important or less significant to the story and the impact of everything. And as of yet, what we've been talking about, like as far as the mental stuff is concerned, the impact on the bugbear certainly draws out beyond this chapter. The impact of the sash on on Sloane's mind certainly resolves at the end of this, and there's a brief moment where she turns into a raven, and there's really no further impact from that. But there is a transformation in this story, and we're giving you your final warning to stop listening to this and go read and or listen to the podcast.
And
there
then
is a
come
transformation.
back.
Yes, and then come back. There is a transformation that is very significant and impactful to the story and the two characters. And Forta, do you want to kind of ease into a couple of the things you wanted to talk about in this regard?
Sure. As one of those things where it's like, I know one of them really relies on the fact of like describing the event. But yeah, right at the climax of it all, I said that that it's this big fight between Hurley and Sloane, and like the whole like you have the capacity to make this better and be who you are, and like that mental struggle, and eventually like there's like the sash lashes out, and hits Hurley with Silver Point, which is a mythical vine, whose poison is cursed. And whoever is hit with it will die. There is no antidote, and it's like a quick and painful process. And how long does it take? As long as dramatically is necessary. And so, like in that moment where it's like, oh shit, I just killed, spoiler alert, the love of my life, causes Sloane to like come back and like give up the sash. But before she fully gives it up, she uses its nature-altering powers one last time to transform them into a tree, thereby preserving them both and putting them in a nice, like, how you say, metaphorically fitting embrace.
Yeah, I would say that's it. They're sort of captured. Their form is sort of incorporated into the trunk of the tree, and you can see them, yes, embracing each other.
Yeah,
and
it's fitting both visually and also thematically.
Mm-hmm. And I was thinking, and I'm forgetting the exact word, so now I'm the one typing to look something up. There is a myth.
Are you talking about Hyacinth?
No. I think it's Bacchus and Philemon? Where they're an old couple who like are given a blessing by Zeus of whatever they want, and they choose to. They're like, well, we want to die at the same time, and when that time comes, they are transformed into Yes, they are transformed into an intertwining pair of trees, one oak and one linden, upon their old age.
And who's this? Bacchus and Philemon?
Yeah, Bacchus and Philemon. That is the myth that comes to my mind when I read this, and I don't know if Griffin McElroy was inspired by that myth or not. When he did this, the tree transformation of the two lovers.
I feel like he was. It would make a lot of sense because they do them boys. If we can go back to fanboying for a second, are extremely well read. And they can pull lots of references from lots of different places you wouldn't expect.
Absolutely. The amount of mythology and background stuff that they all pull from in varying ways, and all three brothers also have three wildly different like interests in life.
Yeah, so they contrast and complement each other very well.
Mm-hmm. So I would not be entirely shocked if that was one of the influences that Griffin got when he did this story. But yes, so it's a beautifully rendered picture of the pair of them embraced, encased under the bark within this tree. It's a really beautiful sequence, and it has the that's certainly an impact of presumably leaving them as such at the end of the story, which is certainly how it originally worked.
Yep, that's how it was at the end of the podcast. and then there was some stuff that happened at the very end of the podcast that was a wonderful callback to literally everything that had ever happened. But the book persists. After there's like this really good debriefing section with the director of the Bureau of Balance, who they work for to acquire these relics. There is a discussion about good and evil and like who is in charge, who can, help out versus like who just kind of watches and does nothing. And while she's discussing these themes and like, how they're always in opposition, there's like somebody like with some information about the next battle wagon race getting attacked by thugs. I believe it's the ones that got the hideout beaten up before. The Hurley and Sloan like appear from the tree, and it's shown that they're not actually like of the tree. They're like dryads.
Dryads. I interpret it as them being dryads now.
I believe that's literally what they are.
Okay.
Yeah. What's a dyad?
Well, I don't think a dyad is
it's just something that consists of two parts.
Okay. I mean, I'm not going to be the one who sits here and tries to properly define words that indicate two things, because we know that I get that wrong. But yes, no, they are dryads. And so that's the lasting impact that we see immediately at the end of the story in the book format, where they are still together, but now as tree people, essentially, and who are of the tree that was, formed of the two of their bond, I suppose you could say.
Yeah.
But
yeah, like symbolically showing that. Yeah, one of the things I wanted to bring up, given my background, was that in the podcast version, there was a lot of controversy. Not a lot, because the boys are pretty inclusive and open-minded and like really open to keeping things good, and they don't want to make jokes that hurt people or do anything that's really, I want to say, insensitive. And so at the end of the podcast, when Hurley and Sloan, who are both female bodied and they are in love, and so that makes them essentially gay, they, this is like the first real like canon depiction of like LGBT representation in the story, and then they die at the end to show like a symbol of love. And that plays into this trope called the bury your gays trope, where if you do have someone who is LGBT in your story, they are basically like token and usually sacrificed to elicit an emotional response, but then they're no longer part of your story and no longer deemed main characters. So they're always ancillary to the plot and never a main integral part that can draw further interaction. This happens a lot. This happened in like Rent and Philadelphia and
the 100.
The 100. It happened a lot of HIV stories, but it's never it's never been like constrained to those types of stories. Now that I've mentioned it, if you go back and you watch a lot of stuff, you're gonna find that whenever there is someone who is outwardly LGBT, they're usually the representation is very flamboyant and stereotypical, and then they die.
It is even sometimes a little bit of the fridging, women in the refrigerator trope, where sometimes their death is also supposed to be the emotional motivator for the heteronormative hero.
Yep. Men can't progress into better people without the death of a woman. Kojima is extremely guilty of that.
And I think, the McElroys in general, I would say the whole family, are always trying to be better. And, Griffin reacted to that apologetically, saying that he was unaware of the trope and was just trying to write a love story. And as somebody, in my case, I'm heteronormative, like I am as vanilla heteronormative, like, white, middle-aged, straight, whatever, however many terms we can layer upon me. Those are all me.
We could throw a lot of labels on there. Sure. Able-bodied.
Yes, able-bodied. Like, I am all of that. And you sometimes you just don't see those things as much as you feel like, oh, I am writing an ending to a story, which I would have written the ending the way I'm writing it if it was a heteronormative couple. So I am not doing what I would be doing because they are an LGBT representation, without realizing that in the larger fabric of our media and storytelling landscape, that it is, adding to a societal thing, just even unconsciously.
Yeah,
and it's something.
It's always about like the power relation. I find like a lot of it's just like, I'm not racist. It's natural for people to die, and so if a black person's gonna die in my story, then that's just normal. And it's like, well, how many black people are in your story?
Right.
Now it's exceptional, and now you're falling into another trope that has been done for hundreds of years. And you kind of have to be aware when you make these creative decisions, not just like your intentions, because after your piece is published, nobody knows your intentions. They just know what they get out of it.
Yeah. Just like Mary Shelley was trying to tell us a morality tale about the dangers of social media with Frankenstein, the modern Prometheus. Once it's out there, anybody can make any assumption about what you were trying to do. And it's important, as people who are capable of learning more about what some of these shortcomings of our media and storytelling are, and the tropes of them, and the honestly, hurtful and in many ways dangerous tropes, that we try and become aware of them, and when we can, do better. And, I'm not trying to be a Griffin McElroy apologist here. He's already apologized for it. But I will say that I think this book balances what he originally tried to do, while also, I think, undermining and rolling that back in a substantive way by the end. But again, that's my viewpoint from a very high place of power and privilege. So
I will say that for anybody, actions always speak louder than words, because a lot of times, like, a creator gets called out for something that they've done, and they're just kind of like, oh, well, okay, well, I get it. I'll stop doing that. Or, like, I fully understand the plight of the LGBT community, and we all must strive to be better. And then, like, the next book, they pull the same shit, right? Mm-hmm. And in this one, they got the critique, and they're like, oh, dang, you're right. What can we do about that? Rather than wait, a year and change for the finale to reveal that they're dryads, how about we just show you in the book now? And, like, it's still narratively important. It's like a nice little, like, denouement, as opposed to just like, we slipped it in so people can stop complaining. Like, it's actually like a meaningful change, and he adjusted his behavior in the way that he writes stuff later, because you can see it in Taz Amnesty. I haven't heard Graduation yet, but I can sure as shit assume that he's done better because he already puts the effort in to not make the same mistakes twice.
Yeah. And
I can trust him to be a good ally because of that.
Mm-hmm. I just want to take a moment and let the importance of that kick in, because we explore storytelling here on this podcast, a specific theme of it, but all story types can benefit from self-examination of what exists. And if you're a creator, as I consider myself, it's important to consider what's come already and what you can do to not only do better for yourself, but not only to do better for the types of stories that you want to tell, but to do better for your readers. And not just the readers who are reading now, but the readers in the future who could use a different type of story, a character that hasn't been told yet, someone that isn't just maybe you writing what you know, but doing your best to do something more.
Yep.
And it's hard and it's scary. And you're gonna screw it up. I know I've screwed it up. I know I've screwed it up because I've been told I screwed it up, and I re-edited an entire book to fix an error. But, you know, if you're out there and you're a writer, whatever realm that you want to write in or create in, listen, learn, be humble, change. And we can try to move away from this as a trope and dilute it by being better and more inclusive. And that's my bit for that. So.
Yeah. I'm going to say that, let me just shoot my cat for a little bit because he keeps trying to get into the closet. Yeah. Poignant. It's a powerful message for shooting your cat. Yeah, I think I'm not as much of a creator in that sense. I haven't really written anything, but I know that the ease of comfort never pays off as much as attempting something, failing, and then learning. Right? Because the best way to learn is through failure. I've never learned good lessons from doing well. I just learned to keep doing that. But you can always push the envelope and be better. And more importantly, there is the ability to do research, and that's not just like Google how write gay good. That's like, you know, kind of look at examples at which, you know, the LGBT community applauses, right? Like there's that book that came out recently, like the White Fragility book, that was basically like, it was written by a white person for white people to kind of give like a really whitewashed version of what white privilege is. And that doesn't help because the best lessons to learn are from the people who are directly impacted by it. And so, you know, look at what like people of color say about, you know, what the white experience does to them. And that pushes your envelope of your understanding of your identity, because I mean, I was raised in suburban Indiana. The most of the people I knew were white and Christian and middle class. So, like, writing what you know means that your scope is extremely limited. If you are also white and middle class, and so, you know, like expanding the horizons isn't just like, oh well, I read a book by a black guy and I've really found myself. It's no, just dig in, see why it's good, why it's applauded, look at the things that are bad and see why they're not applauded, see why they're booed. Try to find like the pros and cons of all these things, and you will ultimately be a better person for it, rather than kind of insulating yourself with the people who approve of what you're already doing because they think it's good, so why would you appeal to anyone else? You're not doing yourself a favor, and you're not doing art a favor.
No, not so much. But
and that's my bit.
I keep tripping over this soapbox that I brought in here, and I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, it's just who put so many soapboxes in here? I just keep stepping up on them.
You know, I want to say, I don't know if we're ever going to get around to doing Mannequin on this series. It's certainly appropriate to, but I feel like it's, you know, sort of a duh, of course, Mannequin. I don't think our episode on that could possibly add anything to the transformative community by saying, hey, there's a lot of transformation in Mannequin, go watch it. But
what?
There is the I want to mention in regards to like seeing things that aren't you, for better or for worse. In Mannequin, there's the character of Hollywood Montrose, and I'm not going to sit here and try and tell you whether or not Hollywood Montrose is a good representative character.
I'm going to look up Hollywood Montrose.
But I will say that as a young person, growing up in the suburbs of southern New Jersey, Hollywood Montrose was portrayed in Mannequin as a person of good character, of loyalty, and courage, and the protagonist in the film, who's a white guy like me, very early on stands up for Hollywood, the things that make Hollywood different, and calls out the villains on that. And at the end of the movie, Hollywood takes a stand and puts themselves in danger. And it's one of the earliest films that I remember watching where somebody other than someone exactly like me, even though, again, I understand Hollywood is problematic in some ways and is certainly a not the main character, but was an important thing for me to see. Just that, heroes come in different shapes and colors and actions than people who look like me. And we can do better at that, but just not only needing to give more different types of people and faces and preferences as people to aspire to as heroes and protagonists for those people who don't have enough of those, but to teach younger people, like people who are growing up who need this exposure when they don't maybe have it every day in their real life, to have that, to see that, to get exposed to it, to understand it, to accept it, to put it in themselves is important, even in ways that, for the most part, may be looked at in other fashions as being maybe not necessarily the best way of portraying a character. So, anyway,
it's the thing where there will never be a perfect representation, right? You can never idealize the perfect way to portray someone, and so we always run under the idea of there will always be problematic aspects of everyone. It's working to minimize the problems or to make it a human thing that is dealt with in some way, right? Because we can sit there and talk about representation in Hollywood, or we can talk about representation in books, and I think the best representation is don't make them immaculate, because that's fetishizing it. Give them flaws, but don't make their flaws stereotypical, right? Because there's the whole thing about there's a young girl who's on her way, to make her future in Hollywood. Oh, so she becomes a stripper. It's no, just do something new.
Yeah.
The saying that there's a drug problem in black communities. Sure, character flaw. Not really, hearing the tone of it. A little deaf, if you will. But I don't want you to be make them flawless, make them Gary Sues. It's no, just there's things you can do to broaden the representation and understand at least you tried. And if you if someone really calls you out on it and you're oh shit, I didn't realize, then do better. There you go. If it's really, really bad, take it down. If it's not that bad, keep it. Because it's better to do that than to pretend like it never happened.
Well,
I say
anyway,
this as a guy who doesn't create stuff.
No, I mean it's all true. Again, I've had to do it. I wrote an ebook, and I've mentioned this to you before. For actually, Misty FDA, who is someone who I've for a little while was doing a lot of communication with, and helping to kind of figure out different ways that I could be doing things, and we got called out on using. I want to say what it is because I feel like if I don't say what it is, people are going to assume it's something much worse. But I'm not going to say what it is.
Now's the time to own it. This is a safe space, Dan.
I used the term futanari.
Yes. That old chestnut.
Yes. And ignorant that there's a widespread belief in many cases that is not an appropriate word to use to describe what I was describing. And got called out on it, listened, went back in, changed the title, removed all of that from the primary story, but I included in that reissue an explanation of what I did, or why I did it, why I changed it, and included, though, the original story as it stood as an example of, here's what it was, and it shouldn't have been. So we know. So there's a record. I'm not trying to erase that I wrote that story.
Right. And then I'm sure in future stories you never use that term again.
That's correct. I haven't. So, it happens. I didn't stop writing. I wasn't canceled. I learned. I did what I had to do to be better.
That's probably why you weren't canceled. We
Also,
cancel the people who refuse to change in the face of, hey, just want to let you know that that hurts people, and they're like, whatever, cancel that fool.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, this is a really fun book.
Oh, before we wrap it up, there's
I don't
one
need to wrap it up, but just
yeah, it's a great book. One of the things that really caught my eye right at the very end, there's the tree is made, and like Merle and everyone's talking about like how that's kind of like beautiful but sad, and then flowers sprout up, and Merle's like, hyacinths, that's nice. And then I was reminded of the story of how hyacinths were like made. Are you familiar with it?
I know that I know it. Is this
Greek
the
as hell.
blood staining, or?
So basically, if I remember right, Apollo always had this habit of like finding mortals who were extremely beautiful, either men, women, somewhere in between, and always just like, oh, I gotta be friends with that, like good friends with that. And so he did the thing where he always kind of like forgot that they were immortal. And so he's like, hey, Hyacinth, you're beautiful, man. Come with me. I'll show you the heavens. I'll show you all this cool stuff. We can go on adventures. And at one point, I forget what he does specifically, but it just ends up like he does it. He's fine. Hyacinth does it, dies. And it's like extremely tragic. Because, it's all in good fun and camaraderie and love. And he's so broken up by it. But basically, like, and from like the blood of where Hyacinth died, he made flowers sprout as a symbol of like his love, his extremely gay love. And so like that's the fact that hyacinths bloom from this beautifully gay tree of tragic death when attempting to climb so high and then forgetting that your partner is mortal.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's that goodness that like you just kind of want to put your fingers and interlock them together. It's like it's nice. Parallelism and narrative is beautiful.
Agreed.
Especially because I'm pretty sure that when that happened, Griffin probably wasn't thinking about the not extremely well-known story of one of Apollo's flings.
I mean, who knows? Again, the Philemon and Bacchus tale, I can't say for certain was a direct influence, but Greek mythology and Greek tales are so pervasive in our social subconscious that, whether he directly chose hyacinths for that, or it just, something inside him said, this is a good fit, could have been an influence without even the recognition of the influence.
Yeah, I think like when it popped up later in the writer's room, somebody was just kind of like, why don't we just make hyacinths pop up? And they're like, yeah, because that story. And it's like, yeah, because if we're going to be sticking with the Greek narrative, why not? I don't remember if they pop up in the podcast, though. It has been at least a year.
There are flowers that pop up in the podcast, but I could not tell you if they were particularly hyacinths or not.
Yeah, I think that's specified in this one for the reason of, reference.
Oh, yes. So, well, I've got to say, we've gotten through the the purpose of our podcast.
Yeah.
Pretty tightly, actually. I was
Yeah.
very much afraid that we would just sit and pick through this thing, and I don't know if this is a disappointment to listeners or not, that we actually focused and didn't make it the Adventure Zone podcast reaction podcast.
Oh, where we usually just like watch something really bad and then we trash talk it all the way through.
Well, also, I don't know if it's just the melancholia of when we're recording this or not, but you know, just trying to reflect on, you know, doing a good podcast and being focused as to what we're talking about. As much as I want to have a fireside chat with you, to our readers, about pretty much anything and everything, you know, we've got a goal, we've got a theme, and we've got a format, and maybe if we ever do like a Patreon or some other sort of fundraising for this, we could have story time with Dan and Alex, where we talk further with everybody about the things we've done on this podcast that we really loved. But, I feel like the Adventure Zone is one of those things where I could sit here and just pour over all of my favorite moments and feelings and dedicate everything that I could to this. That isn't really what we're really here for, and I feel like it's important to just remember what we're here for. We don't just riff on movies we don't like. We actually try and focus on transformative themes in modern media.
It's just oftentimes the bad stuff's extremely distracting. I would say that this is probably going to be one of the few instances of like a good piece of media that it's very hard to dunk on, and maybe it is just we have like this bias. But like I read it over the last like 3 days, so it's extremely recent. And yeah, like it's pretty solid. And maybe it's because I haven't read a graphic novel in a while, actually. I'm trying to think of the last graphic novel I read. Because it wasn't the previous Adventure Zone book. It was something, it was something called like Scales and Scoundrels. Yeah, it's this really small like indie like fantasy graphic novel about like this girl who it's like half dragon but not like dragonborn, more like shapeshifter. And I really fell in love with the story of how I found this, if I may, on this tangent.
Mm-hmm.
I went to Massachusetts to visit my buddy Martin. He lives out there. Good guy, was college roommates with him. We decided one like November, I was like, I'm going to go out there and we're just going to hang out. I haven't seen you since I got back from Europe. And so I went out there and we went to go to Maine. This is in November, so tourist season is way over. It's cold and it's bitter and it's crappy. But on the way up there, he had to go, like, we had to stop off and, like, get gas. And we were trying to find a bathroom. And there was this comic book shop in the middle of, like, this, like, I want to say the woods, like this offshoot of an offshoot. That's like basically it's the only building for like the next square mile. And like we walk in there and there's just boxes high and like really stuffed shelves of all these just comic books. Like some I'd heard of, some I hadn't. I'm not really into the business or the industry, so I'm not like keeping up on like the next X-Men or whatever. But there's like stuff I like never heard of. And so while he's going to the bathroom and people are playing, Magic the Gathering on this tiny little card table in the next room, I like this, like the art style catches me from like the top of a box. And I'm like, cool, this is how I get cursed. But I pick up the book, I flip through a few pages, and I'm like, this looks fun. This looks engaging. And then I kept trying in more local comic stops to find more of this. Because like it seems so small. You'd think they'd publish they publish like once every like 6 months, but apparently it got enough renown that they published omnibuses of like the first 5 issues and the next 5 issues, and I haven't really kept up since then. But now I have 10 issues of this thing. Yeah, I didn't expect it to be really, really good, but it's like really small, and I guess I'm happy to celebrate that even like really small people can get published and shipped to a comic book store in the middle of nowhere, Massachusetts, Vermont border, or the or like in Greenwood, Indiana, or wherever. I keep finding these little things. I swear, like if I'm allowed to go to a comic book store anytime again, I'm gonna look for the next 5, because I'll be disappointed if they're just like, well, we stopped at 20.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I've always been fascinated with small press. Some smaller than others. Whenever I go down to Virginia, there is a store. It's a resale store that has consistently provided me some really, really small press stuff from like the 70s and 80s. Like a comic book that somebody put out making fun of Gaddafi, but it was a duck instead called Quackdaffy or something like that. Like, or it was Gaddafi. Like really obscure stuff. And it's just so much fun to like read those things. There's a comic book I got downstairs somewhere about the adventures of some futuristic warrior who has 3 breasts for creative reasons, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
And then actually someone who started out not as small as I want to think he is, given the relative obscurity. But do you know who E-Man is?
No.
E-Man, whose symbol actually stands for E equals MC squared, was an energy being who landed on Earth and befriended an exotic dancer, who later on gained shape-shifting powers. And E-Man recently had I think I just saw that there's a $35 action figure of him that just was announced weirdly. But anyway, don't know when we will ever talk about E-Man on this, because I have no idea how to send those issues to you to read. But
same with Scales and Scoundrels.
Oh, I'm just gonna look that up. I'm the one with the Transformium, so if you tell me there's a half dragon person book out there to be tracked down,
it's absolutely worth looking into. I really enjoyed it, and I really want to see where it goes. But
it's the magic of. Go ahead.
I remember the point of why I brought it up. Basically, I was probably really engrossed with everything to do with the graphic novel because of the fact that I don't read a lot and don't see a lot of these things, and so like seeing a really clever, witty, but also like emotionally touching, humorously, and also like melancholy and serious. Like it knows what to do when. Like it's got good direction, and so like it's hard to dunk on this piece of media because it's cohesive and well done by a team of very intelligent and talented people.
And that reminded me that I was going to say that maybe we would have better luck if we stopped picking things that aren't any older than, aren't any newer than 1992. So,
is there anything on our docket that's newer than that? Because I don't think there is.
Well, I know we were just scheduling some of our guest episodes, and one of them has requested something that I want to say is the 2010s. So
okay,
there's that.
2000 teens.
Yeah, but I think the study of the evolution of a theme through time there's no way to escape having to reflect on that given the time period it was produced in.
Yes.
And something like The Adventure Zone published, was it at the end of 2019 or was it actually early 2020 that this actually came out?
Pedals to the Metal was published in June.
Wow. So yeah, there's certainly different. I mean, just in the time difference from when the podcast was done to when the book came out, there's been a greater not appreciation, but a greater effort to, be better in creative ways. So I think, until we decide that we're going to try and search for more of the ways that we've, the transformation genre has gotten better, we're certainly going to find things that, as we look back on, even things like Ferngully that I had hoped to be more, positive about, or Mannequin. Like, I love Mannequin. I've watched Mannequin in the last 2 years, and
I have.
you know,
I'm trying to think if I've seen it all the way through or not. If I have, it was before I was 10.
now what's interesting to note here is that I told Amber Mannequin's one of my favorite movies. I love Mannequin. Warts and all. I love Mannequin. I'd like to watch it again with you. And she's like, I don't think I like Mannequin. She's like, I think I saw Mannequin. I don't think I liked it. I think it was really bad. And I'm like, well, what didn't you like about it? And she's like, well, I really didn't like the wizard character. He was really dumb. And the fact that, she's going back and forth as a statue. And I'm like, hold on, wait. There's no wizard. There's no wizard in the first Mannequin. Are you talking about Mannequin 2? On the Move? And she's like, I don't know. And she like rattles off a few more things. And I'm like, no. You've seen Mannequin 2, which is trash. Hot take. Yeah. Mannequin 2 is trash. I'm like, we were sitting down and we were watching the first Mannequin. We sat down and watched it. And she's like, oh my God. Like, I've definitely never seen this before. And, she doesn't have the same nostalgia glasses she has for it from me as I do. But, Amber was like, yeah, this was fun. This was much better than I expected it to be.
This is infinitely better than what I saw before.
Yes. I'd say it'd be hard-pressed to not be better than Mannequin 2. Wish me luck. You do have the, you are worse than Mannequin 2. But Mortal Kombat Annihilation, you are not worse than Mannequin 2. I think that, maybe that's something for us to consider going forward, is to maybe try and better balance between looking at, maybe projects and, transformation. Again, in modern pop culture, I could name any number of people, particularly some whom we're going to be having guest episodes with, who are very actively trying to, do these better stories and representations and accessibility, etc., in their works. But particularly trying to focus, though, on the broad things, how transformation themes sneak into pop culture without people even necessarily meaning to put them in there. That's maybe some of the things that we should, think about focusing on. And I'm as much, in need of doing that as anybody.
I just figured out what piece I want to do next.
Oh, yeah, it's your turn.
Yeah, but we're going to have a few guests in between. But I want to do something I haven't read since I was, required to for school. And that is The Island of Dr. Moreau.
I've never read the original book.
Did you, watch the movie with, who was it, Val Kilmer or something?
Val Kilmer and The Godfather.
Was it actually Val Kilmer?
Yeah, it's Val Kilmer and...
Marlon Brando?
Marlon Brando. Yeah, it's Val Kilmer and Marlon Brando. No, I'm very familiar with the that movie.
I've never seen it. I just I feel like I looked up the movie so I didn't have to read the book for school.
How'd that go?
I didn't watch it. I actually read the book. I couldn't find a pirated copy of the movie, so I ended up having to read it, and it wasn't that bad. But I haven't read it since 2010. So the fact that I could remember that Val Kilmer was probably in that movie, I don't have the memory for anything important, just the things that don't matter. I did not know that Marlon Brando was in it.
Yeah, so, Marlon Brando is Moreau.
That would make a lot of sense. Given the time the movie came out, this is drunk, not paying attention Brando.
Oh yeah. Oh no, this was definitely Marlon Brando not giving any Fs anymore.
Not peak Brando, trough Brando.
Yeah, no. This is Marlon Brando basically having to have food waved in front of him to get him to act through a scene, sort of thing. From my understanding, if I remember correctly. But we're not watching the movie.
We're going to read the book.
What's that? Yes, you want us to read the book.
Yeah, because I think I have the book, and if I don't, it's available online for free, because that book is 300 years old.
Very, very public domain. But
Extremely public domain.
I honestly have no excuse for not having it as part of the Transformium. It's certainly one of the founding cornerstones of transformation literature in the 20th, 19th century, 19th century.
Hang on, I'm gonna look this up because I can't remember.
I'm gonna say 19th century.
Okay. It's a novel by H.G. Wells, so it can't be as old as I thought it was. 1896, so it's not 300 years old.
Yes, I'm in under the wire. It's 19th century.
Yep, so it's about 150 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. All right. Well, then I got
3.7 out of 5 on Goodreads.
I almost thought you said, were you like 7 when this came out? And I was like, what? Hold on there.
I'm not that mean. I just remember you saying that we have to look at these things in the context of the time they were written. I was like, then let's go super old then.
Okay.
And I was like, what's the oldest thing that we've encountered so far? Was it that 1936 movie?
I think so.
The Girl in His Pocket?
Yeah, Girl in His Pocket, which the movie, is 36, if I remember correctly.
So does it mean that one time you're just going to up that the next level and we're going to do Dracula?
I mean, hell, I could have us read Ovid's Metamorphoses, and that's probably as far back as we're going to go. But
okay,
I'm
going to admit, if that's if that's translated without annotations, I may not be able to make it through that.
Oh no, I don't actually think I am ready to dedicate a podcast to the entirety of the Metamorphoses.
That sounds like an April Fool's joke.
Yes. Today on Modern Metamorphoses, we do Unmodern Metamorphoses.
We're going to cover Kafka.
I don't like
Kafka's Metamorphosis
with an IS. No, I've read it. I've actually read that one.
I got a really good cliff notes from somebody who had to read it, and that would be my buddy Martin.
What was Martin's opinion on the matter?
Dude turned into a bug and complains about it for a while.
Yeah, pretty apt. There's actually a video game adaptation that just came out this year.
I love Martin because he is well read, but he has a memory that only captures the bits and pieces that were engaging and not necessarily what was important. So he saw the movie Dune a long time ago, and he's talking to me about it. He's like, I saw this movie. Maybe it's there's this dude and he's got nose plugs, and then he's facing off against this dude in a spacesuit flying around, and then he looks at him and goes sha-na-na-na-na, and then the dude explodes. And I'm like, are you high right now? and so we're sitting there, and this is freshman, sophomore year or whatever, and we're Google fooing this really hardcore, dude, white spacesuit, death words, and eventually it's are you talking about the 1980 whatever Dune? And he's like, maybe. We watch it. He wasn't wrong, but he was definitely inaccurate. So anytime that he gives me a review of anything, I know it's not inaccurate. I just know it's not great. He read Thoreau. He had to read Thoreau for school. And he's for a minimalist, this guy spent a lot of time talking about ants. And not paying his taxes.
Mm-hmm. Thoreau is not very thorough, which was a joke that I made in 5th grade for a play we had to write.
Yeah. So
yes.
I wanna read old books that aren't super hard to get through. Because I know Island of Dr. Moreau is surprisingly not that big. Frankenstein is bigger than it, and Frankenstein's not that big.
I want to say that Moreau comes from the practice of H.G. Wells, doing short, chapter publications, and then novelizing afterwards.
Yeah, he seems like the kind of person that submits it to a periodical and then makes his own book out of it.
Yeah, I feel like that is the origin of a number of his, including Dr. Moreau. I might be wrong, and that I guess we'll find out when I do a more deep dive for our next episode, which I think, given, as you mentioned, we have so many guest episodes to record, I don't know, it won't be recorded until 2021.
You know what? You're right. If there's still electricity in 2021.
Yes. So,
what
anywho.
a stressful time.
Mm-hmm. So, for those of you who are still listening to all of our ramblings right now, it is election night as we record this. So, we might have other things also rattling around in our brains as the evening goes on. So,
I'm so happy that nobody can spoil this for us, and we can't spoil it for anybody because this isn't coming out until what? We have a pretty big backlog of things to upload. So.
Oh yeah, whatever happens tonight, they will be well sworn in by the time this episode comes out. So,
spoiler warning: we have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, maybe on that note, if you need something wonderful and comforting to read in whatever future you are listening to this in, The Adventure Zone, Pedals to the Metal is what we touched on this evening. It's the third trade. Certainly pick up trades 1 and 2. They are equally amazing. A little less transformation in them, but give that a go. And you've sort of already done a self-pitch of things a little bit earlier in the episode, Mr. Fort. I'm not sure how I may or may not rearrange things. Is there anything else that you wanted to promote this evening?
That's actually a good question. I know that by the time this comes out, the fourth book might have come out already, which would be cool. I know that they're doing pre-orders now, which means that who knows. But any other things I need to promote? No. I think this is going to be the year where I try to just take care of myself.
Yeah, that's not so bad a thing. In regards to me, I can say at this point that I've, thanks to our conversations with Rolf, I've officially licensed the rights to remake the original Mood Boobs as a comic and then continue that story in graphic format. By the time this comes out, right now I've already gotten the first page of that underway, so there will be something in my Patreon to view of the adaptation of Mood Boobs, and it is with a script that's a little different than what was actually filmed. So if you're curious as to the unfilmed comic adaptation of the short film Mood Boobs, give my Patreon a look in whatever month and year this comes out in. Patreon.com/DSRedux, DSREDUX, and hopefully that, as well as literally hundreds of other comics pages and thousands of prose, will be available to you if you decide to support me there.
Woo! Yeah. Do it.
Well, we've got to get off of this and face whatever news and reality is going on. So.
Yeah,
I'm gonna rip this Band-Aid off and say thank you to everybody who listens to this kind of odd episode, but I'm proud of it.
I like it.
Yeah. I've been Dan Standing.
And I'm Alex Ford.
Good night and good luck.
Yes, here's to a bright and beautiful future.
Amen. Saving it. This is a really exciting portion of the podcast, which I may or may not edit out. Let's see here.
This is engaging. Oh, while you're doing that, I was in a play.
Oh, yes. I meant to ask you about that when we weren't recording.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like I forgot to mention it, but I can say it out loud because whether you keep this section or not, it's up to you. But I was in a play. I did Call of Cthulhu at like a local community theater. Was it as
That's
safe as I
awesome.
would have liked it to have been? No, but it was a lot of fun. I got to play like 3 characters because we got about 1/3 of the amount of cast members that we needed.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, because it's a pandemic and we're like the Owen County Civic Theater, and Owen County is like an extremely small county. And it's like an hour west of Bloomington. Like it's really off far and like not an hour, it's a half hour away, but there's no one there. They have like one city and the rest is just kind of occasional people scattered about farms and personal properties that are like 12 acres.
In regards to Instagram, I had seen that you had posted on there, on your Instagram, about
Yeah.
that, and looked very cool. That's very exciting. So it went well?
I would argue that it went as well as a first time virtual play for an extremely small theater with 1 director and no stage managers.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we
I would say just performing it was probably considered success.
the fact that we could actually get a full feature out. Volume levels, not the best. Some of the cameras kept turning off because we only had 1 set of batteries between them. Not the best. Working with new software on an unreliable internet connection, again, not the best. But everyone gave it 110%, and I love that.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, I think it's on YouTube. I don't know if it'll still... I think it's going to be on YouTube until the Lovecraft Historical Society demands that they take it down. So if you go to the Owen County Civic Theater YouTube page, you can see it.
Well, I will move this to the self-promotion section, and
Oh,
I
yeah,
think,
that's smart.
yeah, it'll be good. But good. I did mean to ask you about it, and I got so caught up in like having a million dates to schedule here that I totally forgot.
Because we're going to have so many guest interviews.
Yay! Look forward to
gonna
that,
It's
listeners.
going to be great. I'm looking excited.
I am excited too. They're good.
I feel like it's going
people.
to be one of those moments where they're like, hello, Dan and Fort. We spoke briefly. And I'm like, yes, we did. Very briefly. How are you? It's been a year.
Not quite a year, but it certainly feels like it.
It's pushing it. It's been like
Yeah.
3 years if we're going by how it felt.
2020 has been as many years as its number. Like, it's just been to think about the fact that I did a convention and a cruise at the beginning of the year feels so long ago. Like,
Yeah.
I can't even, like, even when I'm like, okay, so in 2022, Joko Cruise is expected to resume. Like, even just even just conceiving of how far away that is, given my experience this year of how time works, like, it does not compute. Like, I cannot conceive of it.
I'm trying to remember what movie it was from, but there's the line where the person's like, this is mind-boggling. It's like, you mean boggling? It's like, no, it's bottling. It's bottling my mind. I feel just compressed.
I'm
yeah.
unfamiliar with the quote. I'm going to have to look for that.
I think it's like a Will Ferrell movie. I just can't remember if it's Mark Wahlberg who says it or like John C. Reilly.
Okay. I want to say maybe that's from, what's the one where they're the two competing fathers or whatever?
The 2 competing fathers. Oh, Lord. I don't know.
It's him and it's Wahlberg and Ferrell, and there's a sequel, and I forget what the movie. Anyway,
I know there's The Other Guys, which is why they're cops. And I
Right.
did see that one.
now there's another one where Mark Wahlberg is like the original husband, and he's the children, and he gets divorced from the wife, and then Will Ferrell marries the woman and has to deal with Mark Wahlberg's character being like toxic masculinity. Like, I'm blanking on what it's called.
Just a moment. Let me, Daddy's Home.
That's it.
Oh, hey, baby. My cat decided to say hi.
Oh, hello, kitty.
I know he's small and annoying. I love him, but he's stupid. Anyway,
That's awesome.
so we were talking about physical transformations.